There we go. Okay, y'all. Now we're going to our slides. Let me share. Share my screen. Okay. All right. We should be back at it now. All right, guys. So, like I said, who here is ready to help improve either your patients or even maybe your own anxiety, depression, neurologic disease without the use of strong medications that often have potential side effects? And how many of you know here, wave at me if you're that person, you're like, hey, I'm a provider and I used to cringe with having to do titrations on anxiety and depression medications because they often came with side effects. Patients were often very uncomfortable. And I mean, it's a bad situation whenever you don't start getting results for people and you're increasing the risk for like suicidal ideations, those type of things. And it's just not a fun thing. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about is how functional medicine can help this. And this is going to be the beginning of a series. So we're starting an entire mental health certification. We're going to be doing a board certification within the Institute of Functional Nurses. And also we have a new branch. Yay. Um, Functional Health Academy is launching as well for those who are maybe not nurses. They have a different background. So we have both of those, and we're going to have a board certification. This is one of the trainings that's going to be a part of that. So congratulations for being here. We're going to talk all about that, and let's get to it. So this is gut brain axis, and this is the gut brain axis is bi-directional. Okay, bi meaning two. Obviously, you know that, but the gut affects the brain and the brain affects the gut. So I don't know about you, but I used to have really bad IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome. I went to uh, several different specialists, and I was scoped down, I was scoped up, and I kept on hearing, "Oh, good news, everything's normal." And I was like, "Well, that's fantastic, except for the fact that I still feel really, really junky." And I remember thinking, man, once I get gassy and bloated, I don't think it's just the pain. I literally feel that I get more anxious, that I get depressed. And I kept on, being told that, oh, it's just your anxiety and that's what's causing the IBS. And I thought, I can tell that it does get worse in that way. However, I just really feel as if the gut itself is making me more anxious whenever I feel bloated. And I started learning all of these things about short chain fatty acids and inflammation and how that affects the brain. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And this is the beginning of a series where we're going to talk a lot about more going forward. There's some really awesome studies about the vagus nerve and Parkinson's disease. There's just a lot of incredible things right now. So more than we could ever go into in one day. But I think this is going to be still really exciting for everyone here. So a little bit of background on gut microbiota, because I know not everyone may be familiar with this, but there's actually trillions of microbes that live in your gastrointestinal tract. There's actually more of the microbes than there is cells in your body. So it's just kind of a number thing, but it's still a pretty cool thing to think of. And there's a lot of studies now, we're going to go into them in further depth, but there's a lot of studies now that actually show that these microbiota can affect our mood and can affect our decisions, even our personality. So one of the really cool things, and I didn't cite it here, but I will get it in future trainings for us guys. But they've even found in mice, which mice are not human. However, we see a lot of similarities there. And they actually found that whenever they put some mice on an antibiotic that they knew would kill a certain strand of lactobacilli in the gut of the mice, how many of you know that these mice became more social or less social based upon that? Those that taken the antibiotic, I think it was actually opposite kind of what you think, but I think that those that took the antibiotic became more social. And the way that they kind of I guess classified that is whenever the mice would go to more secluded areas more often, then they kind of classified them as you're not being as social, whereas the mice that would run around and be more in the group and they'd be out in the light areas versus like the tunnels and the kind of shaded areas, it changed the way that they reacted. to their environment. So it's really interesting. But it's a collective of genomes of the gut and the microbiota. And there's so much we're going to go into. It's difficult to even stay focused because there's so many different things that are affected. And then brain function. So that's the cognitive process like memory, mood, and behavior. Okay. So there's a lot of studies with Alzheimer's. There's a lot of things that is affected there as well in memory. How many of you know that your hippocampus is right next to your amygdala? So more stress can definitely affect our memory, but also your gut also affects memory. So like I've already kind of talked about this, but the microbiome is trillions of bacteria that live in the human gut and have a profound effect on the impact of your health. They regulate neurotransmitter production. How many of you know? I know I see a lot of familiar faces on here right now, and you all know that 90 up to 80 to 95%. That's what all the studies kind of range in that area of serotonin is made in your gut. Isn't that crazy? So neurotransmitter production, as well as we're going to see about the coenzymes. So there's a lot of different ways that this is impacted. It's not just the actual physical making the neurotransmitter, it's the cofactors that you need in order to make things like serotonin, melatonin, all the things. Production of nerve signaling between the gut and the brain. And this helps maintain a healthy balance of gut bacteria through diet and lifestyle. And it's literally critical to our health and mental well-being. I really believe, guys, I know it. Like medicine is completely shifting, and it's not just going to be focused on a pill that increases serotonin, or reuptake of that, or decreasing the reuptake of it. It's literally, or dopamine. Like this is 100% going to be is absolutely the future of medicine. It is just incredible the things that we've learned. And someone such as myself who has like drop in the chat if you ever have. Majority of people have some form of IBS or have experienced that. But if you've ever experienced, oh, so sorry, moving my camera here. If you've ever experienced this before, like okay, you know how you eat something and then you feel just really crummy, or you just feel off or blah. You think maybe it's just like the bloating and the discomfort from that, but also it just feels like something much more, and it is. So one of the ways that and I said one of the ways, not sorry, I just dropped Facebook on its face. So one of the ways that the gut and the mind interact is with the vagus nerve. Now, this is a vital communication. The vagus nerve is vital for a lot of organs. It's not just the gut, but it has to do with the guts, the intestines, the heart, lungs, stomach. It's a huge link in the body. It's like a major highway in the body for information, and it goes bi-directional. Okay, not just from the brain to the gut, but from the gut to the brain. There's even studies such as in stress, and I don't have this in these slides here, but so many things I get excited about, and I just have to branch off. But that whenever we are stressed, and it increases the acid in our stomach, it actually decreases some of the microbes in our gut, which signals our brain as well to be able to kind of change that. So it literally impacts our brain. Like when our gut changes, it sends signals to the brain. So it has to do with digestion, like the vagus nerve. It helps with heart rate, it helps with respiratory rate. It's a key part of the parasympathetic nervous system, and it's really responsible for that rest and digest. Okay. So one part of it, and this is, somebody has said like when you're more stressed, your body shunts blood from, not somebody like this studies, but it shunts blood from the intestines to the more vital organs. And that's because, in fight or flight, we are trying to defend ourselves typically. Like that's our kind of primitive response. And we're trying to do that. So we shunt from the guts and then to like the heart and the lungs, the extremities, so we can run or react in some way. And that decreasing of perfusion to our guts can help with some of the pain there. However, that's really not it. We used to think that that's all. That's why people got anxious and they had more pain there. That's not the only reason, but it does do that as well. And that's part of that parasympathetic. So the vagus nerve is involved in transmitting sensory information from the organs to the brain and helping to maintain homeostasis and regulate the body process. The enteric nervous system, so the ENS. Let me know if you're familiar with this. But this is actually the second brain. Let me know, has anyone ever heard of the second brain before? It's really pretty cool stuff. It's a network of neurons in the gut that works independently but communicates with the central nervous system through, guess it, you got it, the vagus nerve. It controls digestion, regulates the movement, secretion, and blood flow in the gastrointestinal tract. And it acts like a local brain. It literally senses, just like I was saying, it senses and responds to gut's conditions, ensuring there's digestion and gut health, but it also does it to communicate to the brain. So the vagus nerve connects to the enteric system, and that facilitates that bidirectional link, and it causes that gut brain access. So you can get signals down from the brain to the to influence gut function and regulate digestion and other gastrointestinal processes, but also that sensory information from the gut travels back to the brain. There's a lot of studies on this, especially one that I've been reading. I don't think it's next to me. It's not, so I can tell you who the scientist is, but we'll also be diving into this into a lot more depth. But let's talk about some precursors here. So this is something that I find to be really exciting. And I kind of want to actually, do I want to skip this slide? Where's the slide that I want to scroll to? Hold on 1 minute. Because I think these are a little bit out of order from where I wanted to teach them, but let me just look at it. Let's talk about serotonin first. Okay, so serotonin, most of you know kind of what that is, and we're going to go into more depth here, but it's like we said, it's produced in the gastrointestinal tract, and serotonin produced in the gut exerts effects locally in the gut as well as systemically. So we know that it does reach the brain. It does have an impact there. This gut-derived serotonin plays a key role in regulating that motility, the secretion, and the visceral sensation of the gut. And it influences, of course, mood, cognition, sleep, and appetite. Now, tryptophan, this is it's an essential amino acid, and you must obtain it from the diet. It's found in protein-rich foods, meat, eggs, dairy, beans, nuts. It's a precursor, somebody say precursor, to serotonin. So this is one reason why, it's important to make sure that we have a well-balanced diet. And we're going to talk, so cool. We're going to talk more about it here in a minute. But it's an important neurotransmitter that regulates the mood, sleep, appetite, and cognition. You've probably heard about this in talking about turkey dinner. So Thanksgiving, people say, oh, I get so tired from the tryptophan. And I don't know. I've definitely studies say that there's not enough tryptophan in turkey for us to get sleepy. I don't know. I always get sleepy too after eating a big turkey dinner, but it's probably psychological. But anyhow, but you can actually get, medicinal amounts of tryptophan, and it definitely can help with regulating sleep. Now, one really interesting thing that I just love about functional medicine, because how many of you love to make, whenever you see those connections and then you see them in your patients and you think, oh, that's why this person is experiencing that. So one really cool, how many of you have ever noticed, wave at me or give me some hearts or something in the chat, if you've ever noticed that people who are depressed or anxious tend to have insomnia of some sort? Have you ever noticed that before? Or they could go the other way, right? And sleep too much. But a lot of people, have you ever noticed that they have some kind of sleep disorder there? Well, it's because tryptophan, like I was saying, is a precursor for that serotonin. So bacteria in the gut metabolizes tryptophan into metabolites that can cross that blood-brain barrier and influence the serotonin levels in the brain. Isn't that cool? So it's not just the transmission between it's not just the transition between the brain and the gut and that connection there. It's also those metabolites, right? That we have to have those there. So bacteria in the gut metabolize tryptophan into metabolites that cross that blood-brain barrier. And that's super cool. So let me skip down here to this slide here. I think I actually had them out of order. I try to put them correct. But so you have tryptophan, if you're taking notes. Tryptophan, that's kind of the first in the melatonin synthesis. So we're going from there down to melatonin, tryptophan, and then into 5-HTP. That is something that you can supplement in your patients and some individuals. So you would drop it in the chat. I'll come back to it here in a minute, but drop in the chat if you know what testing you would do in order to find out if they needed 5-HTP. Who knows it? Drop it in the chat. I'm going to try to make sure I'm looking. I have 2 chats going on here. So I'm going to pull up my other chat here. But drop it in there if you know what test. What test would you order if you're looking for this, if you need to know these metabolites and what it is. But tryptophan goes into 5-HTP, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan, which then uses, oh, let me back up. Sorry. The cofactor for tryptophan into the 5-THP. And don't worry, I'm going to get you these slides. I'm going to get you the replay and everything. I'll post it in the group and then I'll send it to the people who opted in. Folate. So you have to have folate in order to make that conversion happen. And then from 5-HTP into serotonin, you need vitamin B6. Okay. So you need vitamin B6. I don't see anyone drop it in the chat. So organic acids, the test that you can look at the coenzymes and the coefficients and see if people are deficient in this. So this is one of the reasons why we say test, don't guess. A lot of people will go and they'll watch something like this. They'll watch they'll watch a presentation or they'll Google something and they'll say, oh, 5-HTP, that's probably why I am depressed. And they go and they order that and they take it and then nothing happens. Why would nothing happen? Maybe they're deficient in folate. Maybe they're deficient in B6, which is what's needed in order to go from 5-HTP to serotonin. So, and then people just, kind of give up on a natural intervention when it's like, no, you don't have the full complete picture. Like that's why some people have really great results and some people don't, with just luck of the draw, grabbing something off the shelf. There's 1,000 things that you could do and that could actually help somebody, but you don't know if it's the right one for them. So people end up spending and wasting all this time on supplements, or even worse, they end up giving up on it because they don't have the right equation. Like you have to have everything put together. So that's why we say test, don't guess. So serotonin going into N-acetylserotonin and then melatonin, zinc, and magnesium. Those are also needed. And you have to have active zinc. And then folate is once again needed, and B12. Another pop quiz here. Where is B6? Where is that absorbed in the body? Does anybody know where B6 is absorbed in the body? I know a lot of pop quizzes here. I know, but I love this. I feel like this helps build up your memory, and it helps with application. So whenever you have a real patient in front of you, you can say, oh. So B6 is awesome sauce, but it doesn't do a thing if we don't have it absorbed. And it's absorbed in the jejunum, in your intestines, okay? Well, what happens if somebody has SIBO? What is SIBO? Drop it in the chat. Do y'all know what SIBO is? Intestines! Delaney knew it! She was right on it. She got it in the chat. Woo! SIBO is short intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay, one of the common bacterial overgrowth. She got it again. She's on it. And I know a lot of you are driving. It's hard. So, but she is on it. That's exactly correct. So if we have that, we often have slow guts. Okay. Often we have constipation in that. And we have what's called leaky gut. I know most of you know what that is. We're going to talk about that in a little bit as well, because it is a part of it. But they have that leaky gut and you're not absorbing things correct. So yes, it is an absolute direct communication between the gut and the brain, but there's also these other parts of it that impact it. If you don't have a healthy gut, you can't absorb that vitamin B6. You can't make that serotonin on your own. So that's why, just sometimes supplementing with 5-HTP, yeah, maybe they don't have the B12 or B6. Maybe they also have a gut that's not absorbing it. Same thing with vitamin D. And there's just so many things like that. So that's why very often, this is kind of a side note, but you want to make sure that your patient's guts are working good before almost any treatment, because that could be exactly why. And sometimes when you just correct the gut, so many other things correct. Like if you're in our course and you know that hormones are affected by this, and that's why we say, like, when you correct these things, you often don't need supplementation. There are more hormone replacement therapies. I meant not necessarily supplementation, but hormone replacement, or HRT. You don't necessarily need it because you correct all these other things for people, right? Okay, so if you can see the slides here, I said, which comes first, gut flora or the brain? And the first thing I have on there is a chicken next to the gut affects the brain. So various strands within the Lactobacillus genus, such as Lactobacillus reuteri or Lactobacillus plantarum, have been studied for the potential influence on, now we're going to talk about it is also on serotonin, but also dopamine. Dopamine is another thing that we need in order to not be anxious or depressed. It's also super important in preventing Parkinson's disease. So the brain affects the gut. So the gut affects the brain affects the gut. And then I have a picture of an egg there. If you can't see the slides, which if you're live, you can't because I wasn't able to connect. I don't know. Next time we'll get it. We'll get it, guys. And we can zoom into the group as well. But so that enteric nervous system, which is our second brain, helps regulate the gastrointestinal functions, including neurotransmitter production. Okay. So the overall picture here that I have is that who knew all this stuff? God knew, y'all. I'm sorry, y'all know me. I'm going to put some scripture up in here because that's why I say all the time, functional medicine is 100% scripturally based. Like God already told us. And then we got in there with all of our ideas on how we should make food different or chemically produce it. We should change all of these things. And then we got ourselves in this huge mess, right? There's no coincidence here that food and junk in food is on the rise with obesity, and obesity is on the rise with depression, anxiety, and all of those things, which then allows people to get hooked into that cycle of having to, or feeling they need to, self-treat with food. In Philippians 3:19, it says their God is in their belly. And yes, I believe that scripture does have to do with gluttony and warning people against it. That's how that is usually always typically used. If you've seen it used a different way or described, let me know. But yeah, I mean, I do think that that's a part of it. However, how many of you know that also the neurotransmitters such as ghrelin, that's affected in our gut? Oh, good. Rainey says this makes so much sense. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. Thank you. How many of you know, like ghrelin, that affects our food. It affects our mood. It affects our actions. It affects our thoughts and the things that we want to take actions on. So serotonin affects our mood. That's in the gut, right? Their gut is in their belly. Like whether or not people are self-medicating with certain things. I mean, I just feel like there's so much deeper of a knowledge. And I'm going to show you another scripture too, because that's just how I roll. You don't have to believe what I believe, but I'm going to share that part of it. Okay. But we're going to go into even more depth on why, it's just so cool. It's so cool. God already knew, guys. So diet, fiber feeds good bacteria, and that helps that good bacteria kind of flourish. So that is one of the reasons why we say fiber is good. How many, I'm going to read the next part of the slide here, but if you know, drop it in the chat. When should you not be supplementing with fiber yet? Not be supplementing, there's more than one, but one of the main ways when we're talking about the gut, when you shouldn't necessarily be putting people on like a fiber supplementation, at least like high fiber food can sometimes be okay, except for like beans, stuff like that. High FODMAP, maybe. I'm giving you some hints here. When would not be a good time to supplement fiber? Like we're going to show you the sequence on how you treat somebody through this. When would not be a good time? So fiber does feed the good bacteria, but it also does something else. So the good gut bacteria supports the gut-brain axis, and the healthy gut bacteria communicate with the brain via the vagus nerve, improving that mood and that cognition. So it's going full circle in that way. Now, eating a high-fiber diet is important, and it has actually been shown to improve cognition in general, unless somebody has that SIBO that we were talking about before, the short intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And the reason why is the bacteria that is maybe honestly not even bad bacteria. It could be bad bacteria, but may not be bad bacteria. It's just bacteria that's in the wrong place. So it shouldn't be in that small intestines. And because that small intestines is just right there after the stomach, that food isn't broken down, then the bacteria in the small intestine starts breaking down that fiber, and it causes a lot of gas and bloating, and it can cause that inflammation to get worse. Inflammation is the root of disease. So we know that we don't want to do anything that increases that first. You need to get rid of the bacteria that's overgrown in the small intestines or any of the pathogens that are there, and the pathogenic bacteria, and correct that first, because you don't want to feed, because even though it's feeding that fiber is feeding the good bacteria, it could be feeding the bad, but also it could be feeding good bacteria that's not in the right place. Does that make sense? And then people are not going to be comfortable. They're going to be gassy, bloated, and that gas and that bloat can also further exacerbate constipation, making it even harder for them to treat that SIBO. So sometimes we do need to make sure we need to screen somebody for that. And that's one of those things that, we don't just, whenever patients tell us, that makes me feel so much worse. Like one, that's a clue, but we just don't ignore it from people, right? Like we listen to them and we know that that makes a big difference. So if somebody says that, oh, I can't do fiber, man, it makes me so gassy and bloated. I was one of those people, guys. I was eating there for a while. This is before I understood, functional medicine, all the things, but I was forcing myself to eat like whole grain bread and beans and black beans because I was told that it's really healthy and the antioxidants and black beans. I remember one time I had a black bean burger trying to be healthy and I was dying in pain. Somebody say dying in pain after that. And I could not understand. I was trying so hard to be healthy, but I didn't know that I had SIBO. And that was not the right thing for me. That's why that there isn't just one diet for any person. We have to be able to recognize that. And that's why I'm not a fan of just saying that, just this one diet is the absolute perfect thing for anybody. I tried to do vegan diets. I tried to do paleo diets. Oh, that was horrible on me too. During that time, right? Like now I'm much better. I can eat more. But so how interesting is that? You have to know your patients. All right. So that leaky gut that we were just talking about, leaky gut is known as intestinal permeability. So that's the more formal word there for it. It occurs when the lining of the intestines becomes compromised, and that allows the ingested food particles or the toxins that maybe need to be removed or shouldn't have ever been eaten in the first place, and the bacteria to leak into the bloodstream. This causes an immune trigger. Okay, somebody say immune trigger and an immune response, which leads to, you guessed it, inflammation. I just noticed an error right there, so I'm gonna fix that. Inflammation, and it can be throughout the body. This inflammation can further irritate the vagus nerve, the guts. It can further irritate the production of serotonin, decrease the production of serotonin, and have absolute effects on mood and cognition. Excuse me. And then after the function, also a function, alter the functioning of the brain, leading to symptoms such as anxiety, depression, cognitive impairment, and interfere with the neurosignaling, as well as what we talked about before, which is the absorption of essential coenzymes. So what do we do to correct this? Well, first of all, we've already learned that we test, we don't guess. And then if there are any bad, I should put in here if present. I'm going to change the slide a little bit because we may not need to remove microorganisms. Most of the time, though, there is at least something that's overgrown whenever we do a GI map. Whenever we're looking at the microorganisms that are in the microbes in the gut and the gut flora, majority of the time, I've only seen one where only one needed to be eliminated, right? And we usually eliminate the bad by increasing the good because they're commensal. They help correct themselves. But you remove the bad. If present, you replace the good. Okay? You replace the good. Okay, so a diverse gut flora is linked to improved mood regulation, supports the production of neurotransmitters, and reduces inflammations, contributing to a healthier gut-brain axis. So diverse gut flora. That is what is so key. And guys, I'm not trying to like toot a horn or anything like that, but I have felt like in my body for so long that, and this is before I really knew about gut, brain, and microorganisms, the microbiome. I loved, like, one of the first things that hooked me into healthy living was knowing about all the different properties that, like, blueberries decrease the risk of Alzheimer's, and all the different like phenols and the antioxidants in food and the different ones, and just how, like, like they say, like, eat the rainbow and how important that is. Well, let me hit you with Genesis 1:29. Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. Wait for it. You shall have them all for food. I think that is super cool because that is one of the biggest things that harm people, is just getting into this rut of eating the same kind of thing over and over. Usually like a little bit of something bad even isn't necessarily going to be bad for somebody, but not having that diversity and not having that diverse gut flora. So that's actually one of the things that harms us a little bit in testing and knowing, what is the correct, like, diagnostic labs. They have a lot of really great basis for um, knowing like what is a normal gut flora, but there's also kind of the counter argument that we kind of discovered this a little bit late in the game, and we don't know necessarily what is a perfect gut flora for somebody. So that's another thing to kind of always keep into mind, in that, if somebody's maybe not doing better with their firmasuits being too or in that normal range, maybe you need to back them back down, something along those lines. In knowing that. But I just find that to be really cool, because that diversity in our gut is what keeps it balanced, because of there's trillions of microbes in your gut. So we don't know all of them by any means. I think we know the big ones by now, hopefully. I don't know, maybe not all of them, but we know a lot of them to make a big impact on people. And so it makes sense that you would need to have a very diverse food in order to do that, in order to correct that. So this was kind of the beginning basis of what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to be going through this more in more depth. There's a lot more to go into, and specific treatments in Parkinson's. So I want to, like, everyone, like, drop in the chat. If you're live with me, feel free to unmute yourself if you're on the Zoom right now. Obviously, I know Facebook, you can't unmute, but you can drop in the chat any questions that you have, any comments, like your favorite part of this. But I want to open that up for anybody who has any questions. And also my Zoom people who are in our functional integrative medical practitioner and also Passion to Profit over here. If you have any business questions, you can also ask that. Those are also times that, people come to me and whatever questions you have, drop it in the chat. I'll answer that. If anybody is wanting to dive in deeper who isn't already a part of what we do, if you already are a part of this, then you get a free ticket, because that's how I roll. But we do have passiveclients.com. If you go to passiveclients.com/2024, we're going to be doing our next training. So the last time we did this last month, I think there was a really great turnout, and people had some really incredible business breakthroughs. We had some high tickets landed afterwards. We had some people like really branching out and growing their businesses. So it's a lot of fun. It's more business oriented, but we are going to talk about, probably I'm going to be talking a little bit more gut health, because I'm just doing a lot of research on that right now, and I'm doing research as well, but I'm, formulating the program that we're going to have coming up here in the pretty near future on that, and the certification for, functional mental health practitioner. And we're working on that. So we're probably going to be peppering in some more of this into that training as well. But that is all we have for today. So we actually kept it a little bit shorter. I kept these slides short because usually I go over on things. And today we're actually ending early. So that's a good thing, I guess. Y'all get a little more time left. I don't see any questions there. So last call. Anyone have any questions for anything? If not, my Passion to Profit people, I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. And then I hope to see y'all at Passive Clients if anyone's here ready for that. Thank you so much for being live, guys. This is a lot of fun. We're gonna try to keep doing this as often as possible. Hopefully every Thursday. We're gonna have kind of a new training for at least a while coming up, because we have a lot of gut health to talk about. All right, y'all. Thanks for being interactive. This was a lot of fun, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.